Alien artifacts that have come from far out in space have somehow ended up on Earth.
They have led to scientists uncovering disturbing truths that definitively prove the existence of extraterrestrial life in space.
What are these figurines supposed to be? Would you ever think that they were meant to depict humans? Certainly don't look human to me, but it's not just because they're very old sculptures. I mean, they look intentionally not human. They look reptilian. The noses, or lack thereof, the eyes, if these were meant to resemble people, they did a bad job. Either that or these were really horrifying looking folks. But if they're not meant to be humans, then what exactly are they? The statues are often referred to as the Ubaid lizard men. The 7,000-year-old artifacts were uncovered in Iraq in the 20th century. There are theories as to what these things could be, but no definitive evidence. Unfortunately, we don't have any written records of the time, so determining the ideas behind people's artistic expression in prehistoric Mesopotamia, it's not really the easiest, but I'm pretty fascinated by the idea that there may have been some reptilian aliens visiting Earth around this time that people were depicting here.
Definitive proof of life beyond our planet found inside of a meteorite that landed in Sri Lanka back in December of 2013. Yeah. When pieces of the space rock were gathered and examined back in 2013, a shocking discovery was made. The debris of the meteor contained fossils, algae fossils, of clear extraterrestrial origin, according to lead scientist Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe. Because algae is technically alive, if Professor Chandra's science is correct, the discovery marks the first documented discovery of life that originated from outside of our atmosphere. While the legitimacy of the work has been debated amongst Chandra's peers, who claim that the algae may have been embedded into the meteorite during its time on Earth, the professor is standing firm in his discovery and has claimed that among the algae fossils he discovered were other organisms that are not yet identified and do not match anything discovered on Earth thus far, which of course is great news for those of us who are really hoping that Chandra's discovery of extraterrestrial life is legitimate and that the doubters are just mad they weren't able to make the discovery for themselves.
Are these sculptures of planes? They kind of look like stylized planes to me, but that would be impossible because these are thousands of years old. They're artifacts from what is known as the Kumbaya period, a pre-Columbian culture which was around from about 500 BC to 680. They were known for their skill in metalwork. I mean, obviously these things are lovely, but yeah, they really do look remarkably like modern airplanes. They have wings that don't really look like bird wings to me, and a lot of them even have what look like tail fins. So how and why were these created? Did these people somehow have knowledge of what the future of air travel was going to look like? Were they encountering beings with highly advanced technology? The official explanation is that these are depictions of animals, insects, birds, that sort of thing, and yeah, there's a very good chance that's all these are, but I can't deny how eerily accurate they look to modern flying machines. And here's another really interesting thing. In 1994, a group of German engineers actually built scale models of the Kumbaya artifacts to see if they could fly, and guess what? They did, with an added propulsion system of course, but the designs worked. They were aerodynamically perfect and could fly.
The Williams Enigmalith. What is it? Well, I'm not entirely sure, but it's definitely from out of this world. It looks a bit like a rock with a plug, but it's not a rock with a plug, and it's far from being just an ordinary rock. The object was found in 1998 by a hiker named John J. Williams. He noticed a strange piece of metal coming out of the dirt on his hiking trail, and so he dug it up. When he did, he revealed a rock with 3 metal prongs sticking out of it. It looked somehow man-made and appeared to have some kind of electrical component to it. Why? Well, I'm not sure, but Williams, who is an electrical engineer, claims that the electronic component embedded in the stone was not glued or welded into the granite rock surrounding it, meaning that while it appears to have possibly been man-made, because electrical components don't just naturally exist inside of rocks, especially ones dated to be around 100,000 years old, it must be something else, perhaps from somewhere else, perhaps somewhere are out of this world. While Williams is open to having others research the strange rock, he does have a few conditions. He must be present for whatever discovery is made, and the rock must remain unharmed. Even with these parameters, you would think that by using modern day tools and technology, we would have been able to get an answer as to what exactly the rock is by now, and where the electrical component is coming from and how it was embedded. But no such discovery has been made, leaving the leading theory to be that its origins are likely not of this earth, and that it likely holds the answers to questions we haven't even thought to ask yet.
Number 5. The Puri-Reis map. Cartography is pretty easy now that we have satellites. We can see the whole world from space and just take a picture and then print out the picture. But then the printer's like, I can't print it, I'm out of color. And you're like, whatever, just print in black and white. And he's like, nah, I need more magenta. And you're like, I said black and white. Believe it or not, making maps was even harder back then. The Puri-Reis map was discovered in 1929 by Gustav Adolf Deissmann, and it was an absolute marvel. The map depicted a very detailed charting of Antarctica before it was covered with ice. It was made by cartographer Haji Ahmed Muhyiddin Puri. The map is so incredibly detailed that it puzzled the archaeologists that found it. Who was able to make something this detailed without some sort of advanced technology? Also, we can't compare it to what Antarctica would look like because it's now covered in ice. So we'll just have to wait to find out if it's actually accurate. Number 4. The London Hammer. This isn't some bad 80s hair metal band. This is the discovery of one of the oldest dated tools ever. The London Hammer was discovered by a couple who went out for a walk, and they saw a chunk of wood coming out of a rock. They thought it looked interesting enough, so they took it home. Later, their son decided to take a hammer and chisel to it and break into it. Inside, he found what looked like a crude design of a hammer. They took the hammer to some archaeologists, and this is where things get crazy. The rock encasing the hammer dates back 400 million years, and the iron used to make the hammer's head is over 500 million years old. The hammer's head is over 90% pure iron, so there's no way this could have happened naturally in nature. Parts of the hammer's handle have been turned to coal, which means the hammer itself is at least 30 million years old, because the coal takes at least 30 million years to form. My guess is someone jumped into a time machine and got stuck way back. Never be the first guy to go into a time machine, wait until they work out the kinks. Number 3. The Coso Artifact. In 1961, a group of hikers was going rock collecting somewhere in the California mountains. These guys were super cool dudes. They came across some geodes, which are crystals encased in rock. They took them home to cut into them to see what kind of crystals would be inside. What they found was more than just crystals, but a porcelain casing, a spring, and some metal parts encased inside the rock. The pieces all resembled a spark plug, but the rock was dated 5,000 years old. The craziest part about this is the Coso artifact and the 3 hikers who made the discovery have all gone missing. Super creepy. Number 2. Nuclear reactor. How old would you think the first ever nuclear reactor is? If I told you it was 10,000 years old, you probably wouldn't believe me. Well, this nuclear reactor, discovered in Gabon, Africa, is actually way older than that. In 1972, a team of archaeologists dug up a 1.8 million year old nuclear reactor. They were able to determine the age through carbon dating, and from the design, it seems like it was man-made. This is one of the craziest discoveries ever recorded. Some people think that it was a meteor that crashed into the Earth and just left back some nuclear energy. But other people think that it was aliens who came here to bioengineer humans and create new life, and then study it from a distant planet. I don't know, and maybe everyone's wrong. Maybe some people are right. I don't know. Number 1, spheres. If you find one naturally occurring anomaly, you can chalk it up to chance. But if you find over 200 in the same place over a 30-year period, then I guess there might be something going on. Metallic spheres started popping up in a mine in South Africa in the 1970s. They were metal on the outside with some line markings that go down the center. They range from sizes of 2.5 centimeters to 10 centimeters. If you break into them, they seem to have some sort of soft material in them that breaks down when it comes in contact with the air. So far it's not that crazy. But these spheres are dated back 2.8 billion years. Before dinos. Before almost anything. How could you have something that's clearly crafted dated so old? Obviously, I don't have the answer, but we can speculate. Time travel? Aliens? Maybe this is human beings' second run at life. Maybe there's been civilizations that have lived on this planet before, and we're just another group taking a shot at life.
Number 10, Uluru Rock. I'll be honest, I'm a rock guy. I go on vacation, I'm goggles up the entire time. I love looking for geology and history. It's hard not to want to bring something home every trip, right? But depending where you are, you could be in a lot of trouble for doing so. In the Northern Territory of Australia, for example, there is a beautiful monumental sandstone formation. It's known as Ayers Rock or Uluru Rock. Now this site is sacred for the Aboriginal people of the land. They respectfully ask that no visitors take any piece of the sandstone home with them. Yet of course, some of us can't follow simple instructions, and in numerous cases, bad luck has followed them home as well. Breakups, death of a loved one, you name it, it's all bad. Why risk it? Just leave things alone, you know? Number 9. Robert the Evil Doll. A man named Rob Otto, he was given a doll that looked a lot like him. One of his servants who didn't like him made him this doll. This was clearly a voodoo doll, right? Obviously, this is an obvious trap. Neighbors would then hear Robert talking to this doll. Robert and Robert the podcast, I guess. I don't know, tune in. Now, after Robert's untimely death, the new owners of the house found that same doll. They found it in the attic, still there. That family was haunted afterwards by the same doll. They would hear threats coming from it at night, so now the doll is on display at a museum in Key West. No more threats, just glass cage forever. Number 8. Elmo. The Sesame Street icon has been in homes for many, many years. There was a literal stampede when Tickle Me Elmo was released. An employee was sadly trampled, got his ribs broken, is horrible. People go crazy for these things. When the Elmo Knows Your Name toy was launched by Fisher-Price back in 2005, there were 15,000 names ready to go. Only one family was traumatized. Only one. That's not bad, all things considered. That Elmo toy apparently spoke on its own, threatening to harm the family, often, so they tossed it out immediately. This happened more than once though. The audio sounded off for some devices in some homes. Be Like Elmo sounded like Beat Up Elmo. The Elmo phone was also released in 2009, and it often said 456, but in some cases it sounded like Who Wants to Have Very different things, those two. Those are two different phrases. Those are not the same at all. We're all learning things with Elmo, whether you like it or not. Number 7. Belcourt Castle chairs. This one's like the opposite of musical chairs. These chairs are no fun at all. This Rhode Island ballroom is beautiful. It's a cottage mansion, a lot of wood, a lot of history. It smells great, I bet. I would have bet that there would be a ghost woman in the ballroom. Turns out it's actually a handful of chairs. Who knew? That was my second guess. Handful of chairs. That's good. Visitors have reported an eerie feeling when standing close to these chairs. They get the chills, they get this sense of energy almost. Now, things certainly go a step further. Some guests have seen the chair move on their own, or they've had the chairs push against them, all of course by some invisible force. I'm not sure if I believe in ghosts personally, but if I saw a chair moving, yeah, that would do it. Just one of those would definitely flip my beliefs for sure. Haunted furniture, that gets me. That's pretty bad. Number 6, the haunted skull. I'm pretty sure every skull is haunted. No, but I don't know. This one specifically, oh, this one's real haunted though. Here we go. Located in the Burton Agnes Hall over in England, the screaming skull sits quite still, but its curse is very real and very active. The screaming skull once belonged to Catherine Ann Griffith, who died in 1620. Now, reports of strange figures or shadows around the skull, that's one thing, but many people believe they could still hear the screams of one Catherine Ann Griffith to this day.
In our number 5 spot today, we have Gondwana. This one is hard to think of as an artifact, but I most definitely think it applies for today's list. In 2011, National Geographic published an article where they said that pieces of Gondwana may have been discovered deep in the Indian Ocean. Gondwana is the ancient continent that used to exist when Australia, India, and Antarctica were all one landmass. Apparently, they found the presence of granite and sandstone, which is unusual to find on the seabed and is much more common to continents. There isn't a ton that is known about these microcontinents, but it truly is very mysterious and very fascinating. Since these pieces were from a time when dinosaurs still roamed the earth, they have even found fossils. In our number 4 spot today, we have these Stone Age artifacts. Swedish divers found artifacts that they believe may have been the remnants of Swedish people all the way back from the Stone Age. These artifacts were found in the Baltic Sea and are believed to be 11,000 years old. They were found 16 meters below the water, and their findings consisted of animal horns, flint tools, wood, and ropes. It's crazy that researchers have the ability to date these kinds of things as far back as they have with these ones. Apparently they were also pretty well preserved when found, which is a whole other mystery to me. It may seem like a small find, but every artifact can help give us insight to what life on Earth was like all those years ago. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Bronze Age sewn boat. 2014 saw quite an interesting archaeological discovery when the researcher Dalia revealed that they had discovered a Bronze Age sewn boat. This boat was found in a cove in Croatia and has been dated to have been wrecked in 1200 BC, which is unbelievable. The boat is made out of wood that is sewn together by ropes, roots, and willow branches. It is 7 meters long and 2.5 meters high, and considering the fact that it is 3,200 years old, it certainly has held up remarkably. This boat has given us at least a small glimpse into how boats were made all the way back then. Sometimes I hear about things that really leave me in awe of the things that have gone on our Earth. It's so unbelievably cool to think about. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Yonaguni Monument. Who would have thought that hammerhead sharks could lead to the discovery of an ancient artifact? Well, not exactly, but in the sea just off of Yonaguni in Japan, there is a diving location that has a high population of hammerhead sharks, making it a large and popular attraction. In 1986, a diver in the area noticed some formation on the seabed that resembled a structure of some sort. This led to a team of scientists going on a dive to gather more information, and this is when the Yonaguni Monument was officially discovered. The monument is made out of sandstone and mudstone, but here's the mysterious thing. Scientists can't agree on its origins. There are some who believe that this is a natural formation, but there are some who swear that it is man-made. There are pretty reasonable arguments for both sides, and considering the fact that this thing is at least 10,000 years old, I guess it's fair to say that we may not have all the answers. In our number 1 spot today, we have Stardust. You guys, I truly don't even know what to make of this one. So apparently, 2.7 million years ago, a star exploded, and German researchers have now been able to locate pieces of it while they were drilling in the Pacific Ocean. I can't even believe that is a sentence that is true. This star was a Type 2 supernova, which means that the star had to have at least 8 times the mass of the Sun, and it also ejects iron-60 during the explosion. Somehow the star fragments ended up in the Pacific Ocean to be discovered in the remains of magnetic bacteria that were feasting on the iron from the star. Scientists believe it happened all that time ago because apparently iron-60 is way too young for Earth, whatever that means. Science is so crazy sometimes, you guys.
Coming in at number 10, we have the sarcophagus of Menkaure. The Great Pyramids house some of the most important people of their day. You have to imagine if thousands of people died to build a monument just to put a dead body in, then you'd have to be someone pretty important. I'll be lucky if my ashes get kept in a mayonnaise jar. But in one of the pyramids of Giza was the sarcophagus of Menkaure. This was found by British explorer Howard Weiss. This should be no surprise, this was back in the 1800s, and we all know how much the English love to come through and take everything. One of the craziest things about Weiss's excavation of the pyramids was the fact that he used explosives to blast his way inside. This dude clearly had a ton of respect for the architecture. Eventually, this guy's demolition style of getting into a pyramid got him what he wanted. He was face to face with the sarcophagus of Menkaure. He hauled this thing out and then he slapped it on a boat to send it back to England. Well, on the way back, the boat sank, and since then, the treasure has been lost to man. Coming in at number 9, we have the menorah of the Second Temple. The English weren't the only ones who would go around taking cool stuff from cool places. I mean, let's be honest. If we go back in time far enough, we will find that every group of people took things from everywhere. Well, the Romans thought that they would take a trip down to Jerusalem to steal the menorah of the Second Temple. They didn't destroy it, but they brought it back to the Temple of Peace. That is a very strange thing to call a place where you keep a bunch of stolen artifacts from foreign places. Like, oh, this is the Temple of Peace? How did you get that menorah? Ruthless bloodshed? Yeah, that seems nice. Well, the Temple of Peace was eventually burnt to the ground, and it's unknown if the menorah of the Second Temple survived this. Really, there's two options here. Either it was destroyed along with the temple, or it was taken to Carthage by a group of people called the Vandals. And guys, remember to hit that like button because it really helps us out. Coming in at number 8, we have the Barber Dimes. Now, the first thing that comes to mind when I say the Barber Dimes is me walking out with a fresh haircut. You know what I'm saying? But this is actually something much more valuable than me looking really good. The barber dimes were minted back in 1907 and they used to be very common, but now there's only a few of them left. That's not the part that makes this story so interesting. There is a treasure of missing barber dimes that could be somewhere in Colorado. 6 massive barrels of barber dimes were transported through Colorado, and back in 1907 they never showed up to their destination. They could have been stolen, or they could have fallen into the Colorado Black Canyon. If you were to find this stash of dimes today, because of how rare they are and how many there are, they would be worth millions of dollars. So not a bad find. Coming in at number 7, we have Sappho's poems. Sappho is considered one of the greatest minds of ancient Greece, and while there's quite a bit of her work that the world has been able to salvage, it would seem that her poems were lost to the world. I'm not one to dip into poems that often, or really ever, but it would have been so interesting to see what poetry looked like in ancient Greece. Also, so much of the literature and knowledge from that era was written and cataloged by men, so it would be cool to see what that era looked like through the eyes of a woman. I mean, I suspect that it would all be insightful pieces that opened up my mind, but they might have just been love stories or the regular frustrations of typical poetry. I don't know, dude. They were lost and we can't read them. I would hope that one day we find these poems and everyone thinks that they're beautiful and they change the way we interact with each other, but when she wrote them, she thought that they all sucked. That would be very funny. Coming in number 6, we have the Lost Library of the Moscow Tsars. One of the greatest groupings of ancient writings was put together by the Grand Duchy of Moscow. He collected writings from several ancient civilizations, including the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, and it's thought that many others were also housed in this place. The location and contents of this library were always very secret. It became an even bigger secret when Ivan the Terrible was in power. It's said that Ivan hid the library so the knowledge would never leak into anyone's hands except his own. Well, we know that Ivan was eventually killed in a revolution, and it's thought that the location of the library was also lost with him. Either that or the people revolting decided to burn the writings, not knowing what they were or how to read them. Or the library could still be somewhere out in Moscow waiting to be discovered. It would be a great find that would open up the world to a priceless collection of literature from a almost forgotten time.
In 2012, divers working off the coast near the Croatian island of Ilovik found what turned out to be a part of a Roman cavalry helmet, submerged and buried in sand for centuries. It was found in a relatively shallow patch of sea not far from where other Roman era items had washed up. This particular helmet fragment, heavily corroded but still identifiable, wasn't part of some grand archaeological dig. It was actually found by a recreational diver who later turned it over to authorities. What makes this interesting is the context. The area was part of a Roman naval route. Ilovik sits in the Adriatic, not far from ancient Roman settlements along the Dalmatian coast. This helmet, likely dating back to the 1st or 2nd century, may have belonged to a Roman soldier who went down with his ship, or it was lost during transport. Unlike the overhyped treasures of the deep, this artifact is simple, just a piece of someone's life, someone who probably didn't think, or at least want to think, that they'd end up at the bottom of the sea. In 2007, a team of researchers scanning Lake Michigan's floor made a strange discovery. They weren't really looking for anything, they were just mapping out the lake bed, but then they saw it. This circle of stones, arranged deliberately, sitting 40 feet underwater. It looked like something out of Europe, something old. One of the stones even had what appeared to be a mastodon carved into it. The site hasn't been explored much since then, which is surprising. The waters are pretty murky, though, which makes it more challenging. Skeptics were pretty quick to dismiss this, saying it was just rocks that settled naturally, but the pattern, the symmetry, and the fact that one of the stones has an ancient mastodon carved into it, yeah, it definitely seems like there's more to this site than just a series of rocks. If it really is ancient, older than Stonehenge, it would change what we know about prehistoric people in North America. It would mean someone was building monuments here before written history, before cities, before anything we recognize. Off the western coast of Cuba, in waters over 2,000 feet deep, sonar scans revealed something that shouldn't be there. Massive symmetrical structures, straight lines, right angles, pyramids, or what really look like pyramids. It was first discovered in the early 2000s by a Canadian research team. They were expecting to find shipwrecks. Instead, they found what some would call an underwater city. The layout seems to suggest streets and plazas and buildings spread out over several square miles, but here's the problem. The site is so deep that if it really is man-made, it would have been at least 10,000 years old. That's before any known advanced civilization, before Egypt, before Sumer, even before the supposed rise of organized society as we know it. Some scientists are pretty skeptical, saying it's just a natural rock formations, but the shapes are unusually geometric, too clean, and there's no clear geological explanation for how they ended up arranged like that. The site hasn't been fully explored. Deep sea dives are expensive, and the Cuban government hasn't prioritized any further investigation here, so whatever's down there is just sitting and waiting. Just off the coast of southern Greece lies the ruins of Pavlopetria, a city that's now entirely underwater. You can still see the streets, the building foundations and tombs, all laid out clearly on the seafloor. It's over 5,000 years old, one of the oldest submerged cities ever found. Pavlopetria wasn't destroyed by war or fire, it just sank slowly, piece by piece, after a series of earthquakes and rising sea levels. What's left is incredibly well preserved. No one ever built over it. No scavengers took the stone. It's just there, untouched under the waves. Divers have mapped out more than 15 buildings here. Some still have dividing walls, some even had plumbing. People lived their entire lives here, close to the sea that eventually claimed it. Pavlopetria matches descriptions from ancient texts about cities swallowed by water. Some even link it loosely to the Atlantis myth. That's a stretch, sure, but when you see how complete the ruins are, it's hard not to wonder how many other cities might be submerged out there. Near the island of Bimini in the Bahamas, there's a line of these huge stone blocks resting on the seafloor. They stretch out in a near straight path for hundreds of feet, like a broken causeway leading into the deep. Some call it Bimini Road, others say it's part of something much older. The stones look placed, not random. Each one is rectangular, some over 10 feet long, and they fit together in a way that doesn't seem natural. Divers first found them in the 1960s, and ever since people have been arguing about what they are. Geologists say it's just a natural formation caused by erosion and fracturing, but the layout does feel deliberate. Some believe it's a remnant of an ancient harbor, or again, maybe even part of the lost city of Atlantis. And that's not just because it looks like the remains of a part of a city that's now underwater. See, Bimini Road sits very near where a supposed clairvoyant predicted that Atlantis would be found, a man named Edgar Cayce, who died in 1945. So that little detail has just helped fuel the rumors. But was Bimini Road actually a road, or does it just really happen to look like one? Perhaps. We'll never really know. First up, we have the Canaanite shipwreck. Just back in June of 2024, in the deep waters off the coast of Israel, researchers found a shipwreck unlike anything they'd ever seen before. It's from the late Bronze Age, dating back more than 3,300 years. That alone is rare, but what makes this discovery even more unusual is where it was found, nearly a mile beneath the surface, resting upright on the seafloor like it never even tipped. The ship still carried its cargo, hundreds of clay jars, sealed tight, possibly with oil or wine. There were no bones, there was no signs of a fire, just this vessel from another time, perfectly preserved in the cold dark. It's believed to be the oldest deep-sea shipwreck ever found, and the fact that it was out in open water, not close to shore, means that these ancient Canaanites may have been long-distance seafarers, something history hadn't confirmed until now. The site feels untouched, almost too untouched. For how long this ship's been sitting down there, it's in pretty good condition. Just this wooden ghost alone in the black depths of the water. Not far off Italy's western coast, under the blue waters of the Tyrrhenian Sea, sits the ruins of what appears to be a Nabatean temple. It shouldn't be there. The Nabateans, known for building Petra in present-day Jordan, were desert people. Traders, yes, but builders of temples in Italy? That wasn't part of the story until this discovery in 2023. At first, researchers thought it might be Roman. After all, there are plenty of Roman ruins along the coast, but when they took a closer look at the architecture, they realized it didn't match the Roman style at all. In fact, some inscriptions pointed east, back toward the Nabateans' homeland. The remnants of this place looked a lot like one of their temples. It was just sitting in the wrong place. There had been local legends of a drowned shrine off the coast, but no one knew exactly what it was. Some think it could have been sunk by an earthquake, which isn't usual in this area, but there's no record of the temple anywhere. It's not in any Roman texts, there's no mention of it in any ancient accounts, it was lost to history. The biggest question of all, though, is why did the Nabateans build a temple this far from home? Back in 2020, off Australia's northwest coast, archaeologists found something unexpected beneath the ocean. In places that are now completely submerged, they discovered ancient Aboriginal stone tools, hearths, and signs of long-lost camps. These sites are at least 8,500 years old, maybe even older. That means people once lived here, cooked their food here, made tools here, on land that hasn't been dry since the last ice age. Sea levels rose slowly, swallowing the coastline bit by bit. The people moved inland, but the sites they left behind stayed where they were, preserved under layers of salt water and silt. The tools are simple stone blades, flakes, a grinding platform, but they're unmistakably human. Aboriginal groups have stories that go way back about rising waters, and now we've got the evidence to back that up. These aren't just old artifacts, they're part of a bigger story, one that's been passed down for generations. There's probably way more out there too, other ancient sites just waiting to be discovered. Every new find adds another layer to the history of people who knew this land and the sea way better than we ever realized. On the island of Abaco in the Bahamas, there's a deep circular pool known as Sawmill Sink. It looks calm from above, but under the surface, it drops into complete darkness. Divers exploring it have found the remains of animals that no longer exist. Giant tortoises, an extinct species of crocodile, and birds that haven't flown for thousands of years. Some of the bones still have soft tissue on them too. That's how untouched this place is. But it's not just animals. In 2004, divers found the nearly complete skeleton of a young woman. She lived over 1,000 years ago. Her body had sunk into the sinkhole and was preserved almost perfectly, sealed in the still, oxygen-poor water. Her bones told stories about her diet, her life, her people. She's one of the oldest intact human remains found in the Caribbean. Just north of Dublin, along Port Marnock Beach, the ocean's been giving up some secrets, literally. After a big storm in 2024, locals noticed something strange poking out of the sand. At first glance, it looked like old driftwood, but no, this was a shipwreck. Not just a piece of it either, pretty much the whole thing, at least the shape of it anyway, which had been buried for who knows how long. Turns out, this wasn't the first time the beach had coughed up pieces of a ship, but this time, it got the attention of Ireland's National Monuments Service, and they came out to investigate. They already knew about that particular wreck from a few years ago, but while they were out there, they also found 3 more shipwrecks hidden just beneath the sand. These wrecks are believed to be from the 1800s, maybe even older. They're made from thick wooden beams held together with old school iron bolts, and even though the wood's rotted and soaked in salt, the craftsmanship still holds up. This stretch of coast is actually a bit of a ship graveyard. Around 50 wrecks have been recorded in the area, from centuries-old trading ships to coal boats. Most of them were just unlucky, caught in bad weather with no one around to help and no one left to tell the story. And because of shifting sands and powerful tides, these wrecks come and go. Sometimes they're visible, sometimes the beach just swallows them right back up.
And one of the older items that was found is in our number 5 spot today, which is the walking stick. Now this item also is not as old as some of the throwing darts that were found, but it's so unique and cool that I had to put it on the list. It's not just any old walking stick. It's a walking stick with runic inscription. Whoa, so cool. I actually have rocks with ruins on them at home that I bought from like a new agey store, and I love to look at them. Ruins are truly fascinating and quite beautiful, so I'm a big believer in symbology and the energy and power infused in symbols. So anyways, when I saw this recovered walking stick from the 11th century AD, I kind of freaked out and needed to share. In our number 4 spot, we have arrowheads. This is actually so cool. The entire video has been so fun to research, but finding this out was very interesting. I definitely need to go to museums more. I don't think I knew that I enjoyed history so much. Anyways, in 2003, a hiker was walking in a mountain pass near Sion, Switzerland, when he came across some treasures. Not gold, sadly, but what he found were items that are arguably way cooler from a Stone Age hunter from over 3,000 years ago. They were fragments of a bow, an arrow case, arrowheads, and leg coverings, all believed to be revealed due to the ice in the glaciers melting due to the rapidly changing climate. Pretty crazy. Imagine just going for a hike and discovering some ancient artifacts. I bet you there will never be a more interesting moment in your life. Although fine, the birth of your future child could be fairly special too. In our number 3 spot, we have the Viking whisks. Technically not considered ancient artifacts, but I thought this was cool and it needed an honorable mention. The melting of glaciers in Norway has actually revealed a lost mountain pass, and with it, hundreds of Viking artifacts have been discovered. The pass was discovered back in 2011, as ever since, the glaciers have continued to melt and more artifacts have been recovered. The archaeologists believe the pass was used from the Roman Iron Age 300 AD to the Viking Age 1000 AD. From horseshoes to sled fragments to wooden needles to wooden whisks, all kinds of artifacts have been recovered. One of the most unique items include a Viking mitten and a blue textile rug. Wow, imagine finding a rug frozen on a mountain. Also, it's just wild to think that the Vikings had rugs. All I can think of when I think of Vikings is war, so it's probably just me and my limited imagination due to my limited knowledge of history. In our number 2 spot, we have arrowheads. Over 100,000 artifacts were recently uncovered in a place called Nunavik in Alaska. These artifacts belong to the Yupik peoples who lived there. There have been stories told over many centuries of a gruesome massacre that occurred during the bow and arrow war days, which was a series of long, brutal battles. Up until recently, the area had been frozen in the subsoil known as permafrost. The most notable items that were found were the slate arrow points that further proved the stories that have been told about these war times. Although these items aren't technically ancient, they are truly a wonder for archaeologists to discover, and I thought it needed to be on this list. In our number 1 spot, we have an ancient lunchbox. A 3,500-year-old lunchbox was discovered in Switzerland in the Swiss Alps. No, it didn't have a 3,500-year-old cheese sandwich in it, but it did have traces of ancient cereal. Whoa, some ancient dude was just walking around the Alps eating an ancient version of Lucky Charms. The lunchbox is a Bronze Age wooden container, and apparently the food traces were of wheat and barley or rye grains. The lunchbox was made from Swiss pine and its rim was made from willow, sewn together with European larch twigs. It was found in a melting ice patch in 2012. That's incredible. Probably my fave find on this list, but anything to do with food just makes me excited. Excuse me as I go pour myself a bowl of Lucky Charms. Feel free to join me if you like.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the RMS Republic. In 1981, researchers were on a dive when they came across the wreck of the RMS Republic. This ship was built in 1903 and it ended up being lost at sea in 1909. Since 1909, there were plenty of rumors that began swirling that said the ship may have been carrying a whole bunch of treasure. Like treasure that could perhaps be worth billions of dollars. One of the rumors was that the ship was carrying US gold coins that would have been worth a minimum of $250,000, but there's an even crazier rumor that the ship was carrying $3 million in coins as it was supposed to be a loan to Russia. Either way, this treasure has actually never been found, as it certainly wasn't with the ship when the researchers came across it. Do you guys think that there was never any treasure, or do you think that someone else found it first? In our number 9 spot today, we have this ancient battle gear. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far, because it really helps us out. These artifacts were actually found recently after a dive in 2013. Just off the coast of Sicily, archaeologists located what they believe may have been the site of the first naval battle. They found armor, weapons, helmets, and battering rams, and there were even even able to date them back to around 2,000 years ago, which is so unbelievable. They believe that these artifacts are the remains of the Battle of the Agadi Islands. This was when the Romans battled against the Carthaginians for over 20 years. It is believed that around 50 ships were sunk in this time, and that is how these remains ended up there for 2 millenniums. I don't know about you guys, but it's honestly crazy to think about that stuff still being around. In our number 8 spot today, we have Dwarka. There was a time when the city of Dwarka was considered to be just a myth, so it came as quite a shock when researchers found the lost city 120 feet under the water. Testing done on the city remains has dated them back to 9,500 years ago, which could possibly place it even before the start of Egyptian and Chinese civilizations. This lost city consisted of 6 sectors that were each divided into residential and commercial areas. Apparently, the Great Flood that happened 9,000 years ago is the cause for the city to end up submerged in the ocean. It's crazy that we can look back 9,000 years ago and know things like that. The name Dwarka translates from Sanskrit to mean gateway to heaven. With the city, researchers also found construction material, pottery, beads, sculptures, and even human bones and teeth. The city had many royal palaces that were all made with crystal and silver and had emeralds as decorations. In our number 7 spot today, we have ancient medicine. Just off the coast of Tuscany, in 2013, researchers found the Relito del Pizzino, which was a shipping vessel that they were able to date back 2,000 years ago. Among the remains of the ship, they found some items that would help give them insights into what life was like for ancient Romans, and one of the most interesting items was ancient medicinal pills. Researchers believe that these pills were used as an eye medication. They contained zinc compounds, starch, iron oxide, beeswax, and some plant-based materials. This really helped give us more insights into what was considered medicine all the way back then, but I feel like there are many things we still don't know for sure. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Antikythera mechanism. I spoke about this crazy artifact in another one of my videos. In the very early 1900s, researchers found an ancient computer just off of a Greek island. This mechanism remains on display at the National Archaeological Museum of Athens because it is honestly unbelievable. This analog computer may have had a ton of uses, and researchers aren't 100% sure about all the ways it was used, but it is known to have been some sort of astronomical calculator. It was able to predict eclipses and different planetary placements. It was found 45 meters below the water in the wreck of a ship. This mechanism has been dated back to somewhere around 87 BC, and it is thought to have been created by a Greek scientist, but unfortunately after the creation of this ancient computer, the knowledge of this kind of technology was lost before it was found again. I truly wonder where we would be technologically if we had never lost that kind of information.
Coming in at number 5, we have Blackbeard's treasure. Blackbeard spent 2 long years out at sea as a pirate. Before that, he worked as a privateer and probably thought the money was trash, and that's why he turned to sinking boats and stealing booty. The boat he rode on was the Queen Mary's Revenge, which is one of the most badass things I have ever heard. But eventually, the law caught up with him and his head was chopped off. But this dude was a little rascal. Before he died, he let everyone know that he had a massive treasure buried somewhere, but he didn't tell anyone where it was. Now, this might have been a pirate's bluff. Something to send out to the world so he would never be forgotten and send a bunch of hopeful men out to sea looking for something that wasn't there. Or maybe he was telling the truth, and there's a multi-million-dollar prize hidden away somewhere. Coming in at number 4, we have the Dalia tapestry's final panels. Recording history before the printing press was hard. You had to either write everything down by hand or make a super long tapestry like this one. There's no recording it on your phone and then uploading it into the cloud where it will live forever in a file that no one will ever look at. The Dalia tapestries was created when William the Conqueror smashed through England and reshaped Europe forever. People think it took years to make, but the last chunk is missing, so there's no conclusion to the story. To this day, no one knows where these final panels are. That would be like if thousands of years from now, someone dug up the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe and everything was there right up to the point where Thanos grabbed the gauntlet from Stark and then it stopped. You know how much that would suck, dude? Give me the end of the story. I need it. I didn't even know this thing was missing until right now, and I'm already rattled. Coming in at number 3, we have JFK's brain. Here's a very strange one. Someone went out of their way to take the brain of of the President of the United States after he was assassinated. No one knows who took his brain or where his brain went. There's a lot of theories about this. Some people think it could have been the FBI or the CIA to cover up that there was a second shooter. Other people think that his brother took his brain as evidence. Some people think that the government hid his brain because it revealed that he was slowly dying from some sickness and they wanted that to be hidden from the public. No matter what the case, it seems like it would be pretty hard to lose track of someone's brain when that someone is the president who was just assassinated by being shot in the head. The brain would be something you would want to hold on to for a very long time. Coming in at number 2, we have the Honjo Masamune. This is the last known sword made by the person believed to be the best sword maker of all time. The sword was made somewhere between 1260 and 1340 and passed down from generation to generation. It probably would have outlasted all of us because the craftsmanship is so exquisite, but after World War II there was an order from the Allies to take all weapons from Japanese people in Japan. This stretched to even historical weapons. Once it passed hands from its last owner to the Allied forces, its location was lost to man. The sword might have been thrown in the ocean, it might have been melted down, it might have been stolen and now is kept somewhere safe. But if you are the greatest sword maker in Japan, then that would put you in the running for the greatest sword maker in the world who has ever made swords ever. So this weapon that now is lost could be the greatest remaining sword on the planet. And coming into the number 1 spot, we have Genghis Khan's grave. Probably one of the most ruthless conquerors of all time, this dude had the largest empire in history. The Mongolians are the only people to beat Russia in a land war in the winter. He spread his seed so much that 1% of the planet has his DNA, and he killed so many people that it actually lowered the temperature of the planet. And if we look back to where he came from, he basically was living in a village of tents. You want to talk about started from the bottom, now you're here? This guy did it bigger than anyone. And to cap all of this off, after he was done, he didn't want to be remembered. He didn't want anyone to pray to him or fear him or use him as a force to control other people. He wouldn't let anyone paint a picture of him when he was alive, so anything we see of him was made after he died. So all these images could be highly inaccurate, and he also hid the location of his grave. Genghis Khan requested that he be buried at an unmarked grave in the heart of the Burken Kaldon Mountains. Then everyone who was part of the burial was killed so no one would know the location, and it's rumored that horses were released up the hills so no one could follow tracks. Obviously this guy caused more death than anyone else, but this is still something crazy.
Coming up at our number 10 spot, we have a throwing spear. A throwing spear that was approximately crafted over 10,300 years ago was discovered by Dr. Craig Lee from Montana State University in 2007. It was discovered in northern Wyoming. 10,300 years ago, holy moly. Just saying that is so trippy and hard to wrap my brain around the idea of people existing at that point. But in any case, this spear at first glance appeared just like a stick, but then after closer inspection, he discovered that it was a dart from a throwing spear. At this point, it is the oldest frozen artifact found yet. It's been a source of inspiration for others to continue the hunt for artifacts that are being revealed as a result of melting ice patches, and it certainly has created a sense of urgency for people to get hunting for these unbelievable items. In our number 9 spot, we have the Yukon treasures. A size 4 moccasin shoe from 1400 years ago was found melting in the Yukon, and my inner shopaholic is super excited about it. So of course I had to include it on this list. Along with this shoe, 2 other items were found. A barbed antler projectile point from about 1200 years ago, and throwing darts from 9,000 years ago. Apparently they were found by a husband and wife in 1997 who were hunting Dall sheep in the Yukon mountains when they smelt something extremely strange. It was dung. Yes, poop from a caribou. But the thing is, caribou hadn't been in this area for many years, so they decided to inspect it. Naturally? I wouldn't. Anyways, I guess they discovered that the poop was from thousands of years ago that had frozen into ice, and close behind it were these artifacts that had melted along with it. Pretty wild. In our number 8 spot, we have animal hair rope. While out exploring the mountaintops of Western Mongolia, archaeologist and researcher Isaac Hart of the University of Utah discovered something quite interesting that he felt would truly help with discovering more about the Mongolia people in ancient times. They discovered a finely woven piece of animal hair rope. This rope was first thought to have been dropped in the ice recently, however, after scientists performed some radiocarbon tests on it to see how old it was proven to be more than 1,500 years old. Wow, that's some old rope. In our number 7 spot, we have horn curls. On this same trip, looking for more artifacts, Isaac Hart found some Argali sheep skulls and horn curls from 1,500 years ago, which were stacked in a pile by ancient hunters, and this finding completely discounted some old assumptions about the Mongolian people in the past. They were long thought to be herding societies, but these findings show that perhaps they were big hunters on mountain ice. Wow, sometimes just talking about this just makes me feel super grateful to be alive today. Although we are all wimps now, just going outside when it's cold, you know, I'm already looking for the outdoor heater. Where's the outdoor heater? What are we in ancient times? In our number 6 spot, we have Iron Age tunic. Apparently, as Norway's glaciers begin to melt, archaeologists are beginning to uncover a ridiculous amount of ancient treasures, and some say it is about 2,000 plus items to date. One of the most notable items, in my opinion, is some recovered clothing that was found. Honestly, not one item is better than the other. They all tell a story from the past and help us better understand how mountain populations lived. But still, I think it is so cool to see that they found some clothing that's approximately from 300 AD, an Iron Age tunic to be exact. That's not that old though compared to some of the other items that were found on this dig that were approximately 4,000 years old, but still, pretty cool.
No one is exactly sure what this thing is. It's been dubbed the Wedge of Aiud and was found in Romania in 1973. Workers came across it while digging during a construction project. It was found buried along with 2 large mastodon bones. The wedge is around 5 pounds and it's made of aluminum. Now this turns out to be pretty strange because aluminum wasn't widely used until the 19th century, but this thing is estimated to be much older, at least 250,000 years old. It's a very odd looking object. Looks like a modern art piece or something, but what exactly is it? Well, again, nobody really knows for sure, but one of the funnest theories, of course, is that it's extraterrestrial in origin, maybe having come off an ancient alien spacecraft or something.
The Sumerian Triumph Tapestry, which appears to not only depict the succession of various rulers to the throne, but also the presence of UFOs hovering above the Sumerian people, is next on our list today. The tapestry was created in the capital of West Flanders province in the Flemish region of Belgium around 1538, and since then it has been the subject of many conspiracy theories, which makes sense considering the 2 alien spaceship looking objects depicted in the top left corner of the piece. Now, if you know anything about the Sumerian people or the Anunnaki, you are likely well aware that even without the presence of the Triumph Tapestry, the Sumerians are a pretty good argument for the legitimacy of aliens having had a pretty prominent presence on Earth in the past. Adding the tapestry into the mix is really just the cherry on top of the extraterrestrial cake because it confirms how the Anunnaki, the ultra-intelligent alien species that ordered the creation of the pyramids, arrived on Earth in the first place. If you don't know anything about the Sumerians, ancient Sumeria, and the Anunnaki, but would like to, I do have a video on them titled Ancient Sumerian Mysteries that may never be explained that you can watch after this.
Next, we have the Casso artifact, known as one of the world's out-of-place artifacts. It was discovered in 1961 near Olancha, California. While out looking for geodes, these rock collectors found a strange rock that seemed out of place, and when they cut it open, they were surprised to find it actually had a metal core inside. The outer layer of the rock was encrusted with a hard substance, while the inner metal core was a cylindrical object that looked almost like a spark plug. This was not what anyone had been expecting to find because the rock seemed to be millions of years old, far older than the age of modern machinery. So it sparked, see what I did there? It sparked a lot of curiosity. curiosity. Some researchers think this is just a naturally occurring geode that somehow formed around a modern spark plug, but what if it's not the case? What if it's a piece of ancient technology left by an advanced civilization? Or even more interesting, an object that some extraterrestrial beings left behind a long time ago.
I'm sure by now we've all heard the theories that the pyramids were built by aliens, which is a fair assumption considering the fact that historians have been consistently unable to come up with an explanation as to how the construction of the pyramids would have been possible in ancient times. But what about other massive artifacts like Stonehenge, or perhaps the massive stone head that was found in the middle of the Guatemalan jungle in the 1930s? The statue dates back to before the Spanish Revolution, so prior to the Mayan and Aztec empires falling to the Spanish armies, which is strange considering 1, there is little to no way the Mayans living in the area could have sculpted the stone head and placed it in the area, and 2, if somehow they did, why doesn't it look like them? The statue's features do not mimic those of the ancient Mayans or Aztecs. Because of this, it is believed that the features once displayed on the head, which have since worn down due to revolutionary troops using the historic artifact as target practice, were actually the features of an ancient alien civilization that was far more intelligent than humanity, and that likely had a hand in the construction of the Mayan and perhaps even the Aztec empires as well.
This next one is actually 100% known to be from space. Back in June of last year, Harvard professor and theoretical astrophysicist Avi Loeb led an excavation to Papua New Guinea to uncover the remnants of a meteor that had crashed into the Pacific Ocean, and what they found were small spherical space rocks from deep in space, and there's still a question as to whether the object they came from was naturally occurring or not. What they do know is that the small spheres are made up of elements we don't have here on Earth. Loeb wrote, quote, "This is a historic discovery because it represents the first time that humans put their hands on materials from a large object that arrived to Earth from outside the solar system."
Finally, we have an incredibly mysterious extraterrestrial object discovered by the Betts family in 1974. That year, a mysterious fire had broken out on the family's property that destroyed 88 acres of woodland. When the Bettses went out to explore the area and search for the cause of the mysterious fire, they stumbled across a metal sphere with a diameter of just 8 inches and a weight of almost 20 pounds. At first, the family thought that the object might have belonged to the Soviet Union or perhaps NASA. They thought about leaving it where they found it, but curiosity got the better of them, and so they decided to take it home. About 2 weeks later, the family's son was playing guitar while sitting next to the strange spherical object when all of a sudden it began to emit a strange resonating sound that caused the family dog to act up. A while later, the family discovered that when they pushed the sphere across the floor away from themselves, it would change direction and return to the person who had pushed it. Not only that, but the object avoided being damaged at all costs, rolling up slanted tables to keep itself from crashing on the floor, and eventually it began emitting pulsing sounds seemingly out of nowhere. The strange behavior was witnessed by scientists as well as representatives from the military, so you don't just have to take the Betts family's word for it. At first, the Betts family refused to let the ball out of their possession, but after doors started slamming shut and music began randomly playing in their home, they handed it over to the authorities, who were shocked to discover that the metal ball was just that, a metal ball, or so it appeared. While there is no solid explanation as to why the sphere displayed such strange properties and caused so many strange things to happen, I think we can all agree that the most likely reason is because it came from outer space with a purpose that has yet to reveal itself to mankind.
Number 10. The Dendera Lights. When was the first light bulb invented? Well, it was way after the Common Era calendar started, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe the ancient Egyptians had some hookups for light bulbs and they used to throw dope raves. The Hathor Temple in Dendera, Egypt has carvings in the wall which look like gigantic light bulbs. The Egyptians may have found a way to harness some sort of energy to make light bulbs. If we're gonna go super conspiracy theory, which we are, some people believe that the pyramids were actually power plants with copper wires inside of them. They used them to tap into the natural electrical energy floating around the atmosphere, pull it down into the earth, and send it into surrounding cities. If this is true, my Egyptian rave theory is not that far off. Number 9. Robots? We barely have robots now, and you're telling me that before they had toilet paper, they were making robots? Well, not that high tech, but it's still pretty cool. In ancient Greece, Philion of Byzantium made a working maid. The way this contraption worked, it was a statue with moving parts. It was perfectly weighted with a pitcher in one hand and the other hand was open. When you placed a cup in the open hand, it would shift the weight of the statue, causing it to move and pour the pitcher into the cup. Basically, the best bartender ever. He'll never cut you off. This was one of the only artifacts like this, so it's most likely that robots weren't commonplace back then. It was probably only the super rich ancient Greeks that could afford it. This robot was the 8K TV of its day. Number 8. Turkish gilding. Over 8,000 years ago, the Turks were ballin'. They were putting gold on everything. They put gold on your house, gold on your chairs, gold on your baby. I don't know if that last one is true, but it was 8,000 years ago. I'm sure someone had to try. Who wouldn't want to put gold on a baby? That'd be dope. You have a golden baby. The Turks would use mercury to perfect this gilding process, and they were so good at it that we still haven't figured out how to do it to this day. It's 8,000 years later, and with all the technological advancements we have now, we still can't find out exactly how they did it. Maybe it was aliens. Maybe the alien version of Bobby Shmurda came down and helped them put gold on everything. Number 7. Lunar tack disc. When you think of Vikings, you think of pillagers, murderers, pointy hats. But they were also some of the best sailors alive. They were kings of navigating the sea, pulling up on some foreign shore and cutting everyone's head off. So it shouldn't be a huge surprise that they might have been the first civilization to discover a compass. The lunar tack disc was discovered in Greenland in 1984. It's believed that the Vikings would use these devices at night when they couldn't use the sun to navigate. It's not certain how these devices would work, but it seems they would give the user a rough idea of where the sun would be in the sky after it was set. The lunar tack disc would work in parts with other things like wooden slabs and crystals. I never thought bloodthirsty Vikings would be into crystals. You come home after a long day of mass murder and your wife's like, whoa, your chakras are all over the place. Number 6. The bell. I don't know if you know this, but coal takes at least 30 million years to form. That's why this next one is pretty interesting. This one is a brass bell which was discovered encased in a chunk of coal. The coal that the bell was encased in was over 300 million years old, and the mine that the bell was found in was over 100 feet deep. The bell also had carvings which were similar to the Hindu god Garuda, but the bell was discovered in West Virginia. How did a brass bell with Hindu god carvings encased in 300 million year old coal end up in West Virginia? These are so many questions, but it might be signs of advanced civilizations existing in North America way before we think.
Now these are weird. Tiny gold artifacts found in Colombia made by the Cumbia people over 1,000 years ago. They look suspiciously like airplanes. They've got wings, tail fins, some even have what looks like landing gear, and yes, they're made entirely of gold. Archaeologists say they're probably stylized animals like birds, bats, or insects, but still, some of these things look a little too aerodynamic. That's why people call them the Kumbaya airplanes. They've built models based on these designs, scaled them up, and guess what? A few of them actually flew. Now, to be clear, again, most researchers still say they're just abstract animal figures, but I mean, it's hard not to at least wonder. How did a pre-Columbian jungle culture make gold figurines that just so happen to resemble modern jets, and are aerodynamic enough to actually fly when scaled up in some cases? Either these are some really creative animal carvings, or the Kumbaya knew something that we didn't. In the deep Belizean jungle at a Maya site called Luminai, archaeologists started finding copper tools, stuff like bells, tweezers, fish hooks, which is already strange, considering the Maya weren't big on metalwork, and finding them this far inland was especially weird. Most of the copper wasn't local. Instead, it was traced back to places hundreds of miles away, mainly in western and central Mexico. This proves that the ancient Maya were part of a huge trade network. The copper items were clearly considered rare, valuable, used for rituals and trade, and they totally mess with the old idea that the Maya didn't care about metal until the Spanish showed up. Also, goes to show just how connected these societies were. As one researcher, Geoffrey Braswell, put it, the finds show how, quote, Mesoamerican societies were much more interconnected than we previously believed. It's not just that the tools are interesting, it's how they got there. These were jungle cities with no wheels, no horses, nothing like that, but they still managed to trade for copper from hundreds of miles away. This one kind of looks like nothing. I mean, just an old bone at first glance, but the Ashango bone, found near the headwaters of the Nile close to the Congo jungle, is over 20,000 years old. It might be the oldest known math tool. It's a small bone, probably from a baboon, with carved notches grouped into patterns. Scientists noticed some of the marks seem to show multiplication, division, prime numbers. One column shows numbers like 11, 13, 17, and 19, which is not random. Dirk Hoylebroek, a Belgian mathematician who studied it, wrote, "The structure of the markings is clearly purposeful. This is evidence of a prehistoric number sense," end quote. Now, not everyone agrees on what the bone was used for. Some think it was a lunar calendar. Others say a tally stick, but either way, it's way more advanced than anyone expected for that time. It was found in 1960 near the Semliki River in modern-day Democratic Republic of the Congo, and is now housed in a museum in Brussels. Alright, so this one is controversial. The Ica stones are a bunch of smooth black rocks with carvings on them, found near Ica, Peru. Some show normal stuff like animals, but others show people using telescopes, doing surgery, and interacting with dinosaurs. A farmer named Basilio Uchuya claimed he found them in a cave in the 60s. He admitted to faking some of them, but then he said he was forced to say that to avoid prison for selling antiques. So the whole thing's a mess. Most experts say the stones are modern fakes, especially since no one's ever found them in a properly documented dig. The Peruvian government officially labeled them as hoaxes, but for some reason they still keep popping up in museums and conspiracy videos. And you know, hey, I'm one to talk, but I find these things kind of compelling. Are they definitive proof that history was very different than mainstream science would have you believe? No. Are they weird enough to get my attention though? Absolutely. For years, scientists thought the Amazon was mostly just uncharted wilderness, but when deforestation and LiDAR scans started peeling back the trees, they showed hundreds of huge geometric shapes carved into the land. Circles, squares, straight roads, way too precise to be natural. A 2022 study in Science described over 450 of these geoglyphs in the Acre region of Brazil. They're estimated to be up to 2,000 years old. The shapes were made by clearing forest and digging deep ditches. Not easy work without modern equipment. And what makes it even more interesting is that there are no large ruins nearby like pyramids or cities. These things were just out in the middle of nowhere. In 2021, archaeologists digging at Xingshui, an ancient ruin site in southern China, pulled a massive gold mask out of a sacrificial pit. This place has been turning up weird stuff for decades, but this mask got a lot of attention. It's over 3,000 years old, has big staring eyes, huge ears, and a thin little mouth carved into it. It weighs about half a pound. It doesn't match the usual style of Chinese artifacts from that time though. It's not from the Shang dynasty or any of the big name cultures you usually hear about. It came from the Shu civilization, a lost culture that we still know very little about. No one really knows why they buried all this stuff in deep pits or why their art looks so different from everything else around. Now this is cool. In early 2024, a group of archaeologists were digging in the Panama jungle when they opened a tomb that hadn't been touched in over 1,000 years. And what was inside? A whole bunch of treasure. There were gold belts, gold plates, earrings shaped like crocodiles, bells, bone flutes, and I never thought I'd say this out loud in my life, but there was also a skirt made out of dog teeth. Yeah, dog teeth. As for who was buried there, they're calling him the Lord of the Flutes, but he actually wasn't alone. Archaeologists say up to 31 other people were sacrificed and buried with him. The tomb was completely hidden under the jungle and totally untouched. And the level of gold and craftsmanship here was impressive. One researcher said the discovery had, quote, incalculable historical and cultural value, end quote. Now, this wasn't the kind of place archaeologists expected to find a burial like this. It's not one of the major empires like the Aztec or Maya. It's just a small group living out in the jungle. So how did this much gold end up here? And who was this guy? No one's really sure, but it definitely makes you wonder how much we still don't know about ancient civilizations hiding out in the rainforest. This wasn't even supposed to be a discovery. In 2024, a grad student named Luke Ald Thomas was going through some old LiDAR data, basically laser scans of the jungle done to check on forest health, nothing to do with archaeology in this case. But then he noticed something odd. There were strange lines, big rectangles, stuff that didn't look natural at all. And it turns out he just found an entire lost Maya city that no one had any idea existed. They're calling it Valeriana, and it's massive. There are over 6,000 buildings with pyramids, ball courts, plazas, roads, and a water system. And the wildest part is that it was just sitting under the trees the whole time. Experts think as many as 50,000 people lived there around 750 to 850 CE, and somehow this whole place got completely forgotten. It's like if someone found a major city the size of San Francisco completely covered in forest and just nobody noticed it for over 1,000 years. That's how unexplored this part of the jungle is. In 2023, archaeologist Ivan Sprayitz and his team were deep in the Mexican jungle, just hacking through trees with machetes, and that's when they came across something massive. It was an entire lost Maya city totally swallowed by the forest. They'd set out to see what was up after scanning the forest with LiDAR. They named the place Akamtun, which means stone column in the Yucatec Maya language, and that's because this place is filled with giant stone pillars. They found pyramids, ceremonial plazas, altars, carved staircases, and a ball court, all built high up on natural terraces to keep everything above flood level. According to Sprayitz, when we got there, our suspicions were confirmed. Architecturally, it was truly massive. They think Akamtun was at its peak between 600 and 900, the late classic Maya period. It's probably a pretty important city, but obviously, at some point it was abandoned and totally forgotten. And it just sat there for over 1,000 years, buried under layers of trees and vines. So back in 2015, scientists exploring the Mesquite jungle in Honduras found something that for a long time had only been a legend. A lost city buried deep in the rainforest, filled with stone sculptures of jaguars, half-human creatures, thrones, all kinds of ceremonial objects. They nicknamed it the City of the Jaguar. This place is interesting because it lines up with old stories about La Ciudad Blanca, or the White City, a legendary place that's been part of folklore for ages. Just nobody had any proof it existed. The whole thing started with a LiDAR scan. They noticed straight lines under the trees, so a team led by archaeologist Christopher Fisher and filmmaker Steve Elkins went to check it out, and they found what Fisher called the most undisturbed site he'd ever been part of. He told National Geographic, "This is not like finding a pot in a museum. It's the whole site with context intact, and that's incredibly rare." Another archaeologist, Oscar Neil Cruz from the Honduran Institute of Anthropology, called it one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 21st century. Strangely, no one knows exactly who built this place. It's not Maya. It's like an entire culture just rose up, built this city, then disappeared without a trace.
Number 5. The unlucky mummy. Right off the bat, the unlucky mummy isn't an actual mummy per se. It's rather the lid of a coffin that once belonged to a high-status woman who lived sometime around 950 BCE. So a little old, little time ago. The mummy board wasn't seen again until the early 1800s AD. It was found in Thebes. 4 Englishmen found it, and of course they were celebrating this ancient piece of history, but it didn't take long for all 4 of those men to pass away from mysterious circumstances. If you're looking for more top 10s on ancient history, come meet me over on our top 10 history channel. It's called Bumblebee. We do top 10s only on historical stuff. Ancient eras, mummies, silly Victorian era hats, cool shoes, I don't know, you name it. It's all over at Bumblebee. See you there. Number 4. Mandy the Haunted Doll. Mandy lives in the Quesnel Museum in Canada. Awesome, nice and close to home. The staff of the museum insists that Mandy is kept in a separate display case all by herself, because when she's with other dolls, she would end up knocking them over somehow, some way. Staff also reported that their lunches would disappear and that photos of the doll would end up glitching out. The lunches disappearing, that's for sure one dude who's blaming ghosts. That's actually not a bad plan. I'm okay with that. But the photos, that's terrifying. That's a surefire sign that it's haunted. Number 3. The Great Bed of Ware. We figured we'd get nice and cozy for this next one. For starters, it's massive, and it's cozy. It looks like the bed a king would certainly sleep in, and rightfully so. The Great Bed of Ware was built for the royal family back in 1463. It was 12 feet by 12 feet. Jonas Fosbrook, a carpenter from that time, they impressed King Edward IV so much with their work that the king gave them a pension for the rest of their life. People would travel all across the land to see this bed. That's a fun family vacation. Yeah, we're gonna go see a bed. Yeah, Disneyland's closed today. Let's go see this bed. Shakespeare mentioned this bed in his play The Twelfth Night, okay? This is a big deal. All those who stayed in the bed though, they did not have a good night's rest. No, instead they woke up to scratches and bruises, or they would wake up just on the floor. Yeah, somehow they would roll out of a 12-foot bed. Today it can be found in the Victoria and Albert Museum in case you want to go in there and take a nap. Would you stay the night in this old haunted, dirty, and probably very uncomfortable bed? Sound off below, I definitely wouldn't. Number 2. The baker's wedding dress. Back in 1849 in the small town of Altoona, Pennsylvania, Elias Baker and his wife Hetty lived in the Baker mansion. They had 2 sons and 1 daughter named Anna Baker. Anna had fallen in love with one of her father's employees. Nice. Another steel worker, but her father wouldn't allow the relationship to take off. So Anna vowed to never marry again ever. She locked herself in her room for the time being. And when her father passed away in 1848, she went to find her true love again, but he had since moved on and settled down. Yeah, worst case scenario. So she spent the rest of her days behaving erratically, and her soul apparently still haunts that same wedding dress today. Not just the dress, also the mansion is apparently haunted as well. Guests would report furniture moving around. What's with ghosts and moving furniture? Where were these guys when I was moving? And finally, number 1, the Bassano vase. This vase comes from the 15th century. It made for an excellent wedding gift, of course, in Italy one day, but the night before, the big day, bride sadly lost her life with the vase still in her possession. So the family kept it afterwards, of course, but as the vase was passed down the family line, a pattern began to unveil itself. It was kind of hard to ignore. Whomever held possession of the Bassano vase died shortly after in some way, shape, or form. Now keep in mind, this was the 15th century, so the average lifespan was 30 to 40 years old on a good day. But after many deaths in the family, it was packed away for good, just to be safe, or so they thought. The vase showed up again in 1988 alongside a note. The note was pretty to the point. It said, "Beware, this vase brings death." End of note. Pretty simple, I like it. Whoever found it was probably like, huh, okay, and then continued on with it. And then it was auctioned for over $2,000 sans note. Weird, they left the note out of that, that's odd. The pharmacist who won the auction, well, you guessed it, passed away within months.